There's often two different extremes of the type of international filers that are out there. On one extreme, you have these people that have just consistently flown under the radar. So they've lived abroad, they have international accounts, foreign reporting that they just don't do. The IRS doesn't know who they are, and they just continue to fly under the radar. On the other hand, you have these people that unintentionally did not file forms, and as soon as they found out about it, they panicked and just filed everything they thought they should with the IRS as soon as they could to get back into compliance. Unfortunately, the one that gets hit with the penalty is often the person that did the right thing. They just did it the wrong way. Now, of course, I'm not promoting flying under the radar, because one important thing about these international forms is that there's no statute of limitations. So at any point in the future, the IRS can come and assess penalties against missed international forms. And we see it every year. So the question becomes, what do you do? If you have all of these international forms that you've missed, you know, if you come into compliance today, you're just kind of telling on yourself, right? You're telling the IRS, I missed all this stuff, please don't penalize me. Whereas the person that's never filed their forms and they're continuing to do that and they're not penalized. What is your best option in those cases? Because they seem like two bad options, right? So the IRS offers different programs to come back into compliance. And the biggest one out there is called the Streamlined filing requirements. They have one for people living in the US, people living outside the US. But the whole point of it is that the IRS created these streamlined procedures because they want you back into the system. So there's two different parts of the Streamlined program. There's the domestic filing one and the foreign filing one. So basically there's one for expats and there's one for people that live in the US. What it allows is 3 years of tax returns. So you go back, and if you filed returns, you file amended tax returns to report the international forms like a 5471 and 8938 and the income related to those international assets. And then you file 6 years of foreign bank account reports. That gets you back into compliance as far as your international reporting goes and avoids the $10,000 penalty on those accounts. So that gets you back into compliance and basically a clean slate going forward. The main part is you have to be able to prove that it was a non-willful failure to file these forms. And you have to include a statement that tells your story and why it's non-willful. Say you had a tax return preparer that you relied on, you told them and disclosed to them that you had these international accounts, and they never told you you had these reporting requirements. That's an example of a non-willful strategy. You weren't trying to evade taxes on this stuff, you just didn't know you had the requirement. Another is people that have lived abroad for a long time and thought when they moved abroad that they didn't have to file these forms at all. And as soon as they realized they had the requirement, they took the necessary steps to get back into compliance. But that's the Streamlined program, and that's usually where I'm starting first with my clients. Streamlined is only available to individuals, so if it's a partnership or a corporation that you have that had these international filings, you're not going to qualify with them. If you don't meet the Streamlined program, the other option is reasonable cause. Reasonable cause is a much higher bar for the IRS allowing you to come back in the system and missing international penalties. Reasonable cause does not mean you just weren't trying to evade taxes. Instead, it means that you took all the necessary steps to do things correctly, and for some reason or another, you failed to do this one piece. There's no one size fits all rule for what is reasonable cause and what's not. At the end of the day, you have to take your fact pattern and try and figure out which box that you fit in. Work with a CPA or a lawyer that understands these rules and the case laws built around it. But the first step is going to be the Streamlined procedures, and then you can get into the reasonable cause side if you don't fit into those. One aspect that I see a lot of taxpayers get misled on is, let's say you've missed a foreign bank account filing for a bunch of years, but you've reported the interest on it, you don't own any corporations or anything like that, and you start Googling online and you find these Streamlined procedures that say you can get back into compliance with 3 years of tax returns, 6 years of FBARs. That's unnecessary in a lot of cases because you just have the FBAR reporting. There's a procedure for delinquent foreign bank account reporting that's specifically just the bank account. So you don't have to touch your tax returns. You can just correct the foreign bank account reporting going back 6 years, and that gets you back into compliance going forward. So even if you had 10 years of missed foreign bank account filings, you can get back into compliance delinquent FBAR filing strategies by itself. And that's much simpler than having to amend tax returns, obviously. So if you're missing international forms, if you're up against these penalties and trying to figure out, do I tell on myself to the IRS? Do I fly under the radar? It's a dangerous situation because the penalties rack up every year. My suggestion is look at these specific programs that the IRS offers to get back into compliance. You're telling on yourself, but you're also able to avoid penalties and you can sleep at night going forward. Talk to a CPA, talk to a lawyer to help you work through this to see what fits you best. And whatever you do, don't just panic and file all the forms yourself that you think you should file. That's probably the worst of all the options because that almost guarantees you're going to get penalties. Get back into compliance, do it the right way. If you need help, reach out to us at McGowan Tax, and we're happy to walk through a strategy that works for you.